India is not one innovation engine. India has got the union government, and it's got 30 states, hundreds of cities, and each of them are innovation centers in their own way. Each government, each society in that particular locality or in that particular state is part of an innovation ecosystem in its own way. The government of India's Niti Aayog publishes an annual innovation index, and Karnataka state, Bangalore, where I am, has been again ranked as number one. But the action is not just in number one. Bangalore and Karnataka are number one, but there are other states. There's Maharashtra, there's Tamil Nadu, there's Kerala, there's Telangana and Andhra. So several states are making a serious play to become innovation engines on their own right. Because I think what has happened in the last 25 years is that the political economy has understood the value of having an innovation engine, innovation ecosystem in that state, as not just a provider of jobs and economic activity, but also something aspirational for the population. So the connection of aspiration, ambition, and human talent has come together in many parts of India. And I think that is the new India innovation story. Why did India end up on as an innovation hub? Every human being in the world is innovative in his or her own right? So it's not that there's anything extraordinarily different between individuals. But what makes a difference is how it all comes together. To be an innovation hub, you need to be, you need to have some history which will get you there. It could be educational institutions, it could be previous industries which are there, it could be war, it could be, defense, it could be many things which create some kind of an initial starting condition. Then there is private investment, then there's public policy, and more importantly, minds, money, markets, and policy need to come together. Right? And that's the story which happened, I think, if you want to put it in a nutshell, what happened in India in the last 20 to 25 years. Minds, money, markets, and policy came together. They were aligned. Initially, I would think the government's role was really to get out of the way. In the early 90s, the government, as Ambassador Prosor says, governments that try to help are pretty scary. So I think what happened in the 90s was, literally the government getting out of the way and allowing the entrepreneurship and industry to do what they wanted to do. India was opening up. Markets became real because of an open economy. Indians got richer, so you had a larger domestic market, and our companies could serve the domestic market. And what happened later was government investment in infrastructure, not necessarily directly, but in terms of telecoms, liberalization of the telecom policy, for example, which made possible for every single Indian today to have more than one phone, right? So I think there are about 700 to 800 million people who own a smartphone in the country today. That's a huge market, right? And this was made possible by public policy, which allowed infrastructure investments and which still allow infrastructure investments. Now, the latest phase in this story is what I want to share you with. I think governments in the last 5 years or so, or probably a little longer, in the last 5 to 10 years, have understood that there are still some regulatory obstacles which prevent the coming together of mind, money, markets, and policy, right? And one of the newer innovations, of course, is for governments to invest in incubators, in ecosystems, hubs, incubators, accelerators, and so on, and funding, innovation funding, both as grants for research as well as venture money for companies. But the most interesting thing which has happened, and I think Karnataka has done that last year, is to create regulatory sandboxes. To say that, look, we will create spaces for you, not geographically, but in the regulatory space where you will get a playground to do what you want to do. So the government rules, government regulations will not come in your way in a small, ring-fenced set of areas. And I think that is the next generation of government government policy in innovation. And I'm hopeful about this, because if you look at India, and I think what you mentioned about Israel to some extent is relevant to us also. We are sometimes oblivious of government and government laws and rules. except when government rules tell us not to do something. So I think we've crossed that stage, and many governments, both in states and the union level, are trying to create sandboxes wherein there is a greater amount of room for play for people to do innovation. So I think that's the story of Indian innovation. Gurcharan Das, a famous author, had a book called India Grows at Night, where he said that literally innovation in the economy take place despite the government. Now, there is some truth to that, but I don't agree entirely, because government has a very important role, and government has played a very important role in the Indian innovation story. Firstly, by getting out of the way. Secondly, by facilitating infrastructure investments. And now by trying to create sandboxes which allow disruptive innovations to take place.